Hi everyone, my name's Dipesh Patel, editor at Trade Finance Global and host of the podcast Trade Finance Talks, and thank you very much Todd and BAFT for holding this very important meeting on the eve of Cybos, and kudos to the team for filling a room even on a Sunday for the pre-conference conference. So here we are, gathered this morning discussing one of the more hotly debated topics in transaction banking, ESG, environmental, social, governance. Now, the term ESG was scrubbed from corporate lingo of the world's largest money manager, BlackRock, earlier this year, with CEO Larry Fink claiming it had been weaponized by both the right and the left. Now, during last night's traffic jam in downtown Toronto, I searched the term ESG on Google News, seeing articles upon articles around negative sentiment about the term that was once hailed as the future, the answer to trade digitalization, possibly the buzzword, the new buzzword for trade. But will ESG RIP? Are investors voting ESG out? Is ESG too woke? Welcome to this very non-generic panel around ESG, and we're going to be asking around what the point of ESG is. No rhetoric, we're going to be focusing on the business need, the genuine customer concern, and the driving forces behind this controversial acronym and what it actually means for cross-border transactions and international trade. Is ESG for purpose or for profit? Because whatever you think, 80% of global carbon emissions originate from shipping. Billions of paper documents are lodged in the global trading ecosystem, and many shadow real trade transactions. So with me today, delighted to be joined by Kalyana Bhatia at Swift, Matt Ahurst at CGI, and Ted Sheen, Standard Chartered Bank. You all have very interesting backgrounds, so I'd like you to all introduce a bit about your background and what brings you here this morning. Kalyana, over to you to start.
Thank you. So, is my mic on?
Hello. All right. So let me also welcome you to Cybos Almost. We kick off officially tomorrow. Our company mission is really about empowering the financial community to make sure that we can help as many people as we can to feel more included and take the benefits from an inclusive digital economy. And everything that we do at Swift, whether it's creating services, supporting initiatives in industry, we do innovation projects, it's all about bringing a positive impact for the local economy. Now, we're a global member-owned cooperative, and I probably have a little bit of a different profile than my fellow panelists today, but if we talk about from how do we run a sustainable company, we are we're looking at our own emissions as far as the science-based target initiatives are concerned. How do we invest in local economies to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and also about promoting an inclusive workplace and making sure that everyone, depending on their backgrounds and perspectives, feels that they can bring their own self to work. But then we have a role as a cooperative, right? And so we have a responsibility and accountability to all of our member banks. And it's how do we bring everyone together and talk about and collaborate on topics like ESG and DE&I. And if you think about, we have 11,500 member banks, when they all get together and talk, and that amplification of positive change becomes something that you can really be achieved. And so, it's for us, we feel like we're in a great position to have a lot of dialogue and action, and you're going to see a lot of that this week at Cybos.
Thank you very much. Matthew, over to you, and also, how do you define ESG in the context of your role in the industry?
Yeah, so my background is mostly capital markets. I worked in debt origination, I worked in structured trading, and then I worked on sort of large regulatory and risk projects. And then I sort of made a career pivot about 5 or 6 years ago and started going into sustainability. So at CGI, we, like probably all your companies, are on our own sustainable journey, and we're looking at very much the same things that Swift is looking at in order to be a better corporate citizen. And I think really right now, it's really not a question of for profit or for purpose. Is your company for purpose? I don't think the answer is yes. The answer is it's a necessity now. So it's not an option. to not be, right? It's a must, right? And we've come a long way since Milton Friedman's paper on social responsibility of corporations was largely misinterpreted. And companies are not just for profit and for shareholder value. And we've seen like CalPERS change their kind of stance, where they were always for shareholder value. Now they're kind of more looking at different values. So traditionally we've seen the corporation sort of in between two different groups, this heterogeneous group of stakeholders who were like government and academia and me and you, and then this other group, right, who are shareholders, right? And this is the group that they pay traditionally most attention to, this shareholder group. But the shareholder groups are also embedded in this heterogeneous group. And we've seen through stakeholder activism, this group sort of be now recognized, right, as a group. But the problem for the corporation is that they're much better set up right now to deal with this other group called shareholders still, right? So this is the problem for corporations, because they have quarterly earnings calls, and they have analysts to watch the earnings, and right? Whereas we're not in the same position and place to do this addressing of this other heterogeneous group, right? Who who are actually a lot bigger and have certain things they want to have addressed. And corporations are now forced to address both groups. So it's really an interesting position we're in. And so it's really a matter of you must be paying attention to this, because this is the way the market is going, and this is the way the market is changing. And I'll leave it there for now. I have a lot more questions.
Thank you, and we can talk about that a little bit later. Ted, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Mic working? Yeah. So, pleasure meeting everyone at this conference. Happy to be here. I work at Standard Chartered Bank. I head up the Clean Tech Americas industry practice, so I cover clean technologies, kind of ranges from renewables, energy storage, things, emerging technologies like green hydrogen, etc. So waste and recycling. So I see it from more of an industry perspective, let's call it. So a lot of corporate investment banking. Standard Chartered is a global bank, so that's kind of the perspective I have. Frankly speaking, ESG, I know it's a loaded term, but kind of the environmental attributes of the technologies I cover are part and parcel of our kind of our remit, and also they are inherently profitable, because when we look at these deals, but we can get into the details, I think, in subsequent questions.
Thanks, Ted. And actually, once we found out we were doing this panel, we did a quick poll on LinkedIn, purpose versus profit, and 69% of our audience on TFG voted for purpose, and 31% profit on the pre-panel poll. How would you reconcile some of these seemingly divergent goals in your organizations?
Yeah, and I think the answers to the poll, to what you were saying, is the sign of the times, right? It's not just all about profit for shareholders, but corporations are really looking at their stakeholders, and that could be employees, current, future, suppliers, customers. So it's definitely a change and a shift, in what their expectations are. For us, so we're a not-for-profit cooperative, so I really struggled with this question a little bit, but if I go and think about my member banks and against that accountability and responsibility that we have to them, what we are trying to do is constantly raise the bar. How can we improve their friction, reduce that friction, operational efficiencies, and simplify things, help them stay competitive. So it's about how do I keep them more profitable, so and while they're still having a positive impact on local communities. So definitely it is about that, and purpose and profit definitely has its place.
Thank you. Ted, what are your thoughts?
Yes, so on the purpose or profit, I think it's, as my fellow panelists have described, there are areas where it's very difficult to reconcile them, but increasingly I think with the incentive schemes, with the regulation that we're seeing, both from a carrot and a stick perspective with the government policy, we're seeing that they are coinciding quite a bit. So a really good case example from an industry perspective on the clean tech side is renewables and the growth of that in the last 10 to 15 years. So if we look at the solar about 10 to 15 years ago, the cost per unit has declined by order of magnitude over the last 10 to 15 years. So even traditional industries such as oil and gas, petrochemicals, they're using solar panels in selective applications, and that's the kind of technology progress where we're going to see the confluence of profit maximizing activities within what we traditionally think of as ESG friendly or environmentally friendly technologies. So that is one area that's been spurred on by regulation, which we can get into a little bit more detail, but specifically from a U.S. perspective, the Inflation Reduction Act really is seeing a groundswell of activity cross-border for interest in these clean technology projects in the U.S. And so that goes from all sorts of stakeholders from a corporate perspective. So that includes the customers of that energy, including also the developers and the IPPs or the independent power producers of the energy, by which they are really finding high ROI projects that also fulfill kind of the environmental, at least part of the purpose part of the equation.
Thank you very much. And Matt, considering your transition from BMO to sustainable consulting, I guess you see both sides of the coin. How do organizations really figure out what that balance is, given your experience?
Yeah, I mean, so really it's about defining purpose, right? Like defining what your purpose is. So we see there are like a lot of banks that are actually B Corps, Amalgamated Bank, Beneficial Bank, Van City in Canada. So it's really, there's a huge opportunity in this. And like for CGI, we've always been a bit of a grassroots kind of, voluntary and charitable company. But it was actually a bit of a trap when we initially looked at this, because we had to convince sort of management that no, it's not about that. It's about something else, right? And sort of having them really think that way and understanding that, and it's a big mind shift from this whole CSR, like corporate social responsibility, the actual, sustainability and ESG kind of mindset. So it's been an interesting transformation, and it's been a lot of work and a lot of coaching and mentoring along the way.
Yeah, I guess Kalyani, even though Swift is a non-profit, you have 11,000 member banks, and your objective is to support them, and many of them do have those ESG initiatives. How does Swift approach that balance?
You're right. So we, as I mentioned, there's a lot of things that we do to try to make them profitable. So, but we do it with purpose, right? We want to make sure that we are impacting positively those communities. And we'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later, but we're going to survey the banks, right? We've got something out there that we want to find out what should we be doing, and how can we help you push this along positively. So we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on and talk about the business imperative. Ted, perhaps you could elaborate on some of those regulatory incentives that are driving clean technology innovations and moving that sector towards profitability and success ultimately.
Sure, I'll focus on the carbon incentive, the environmental part of the ESG equation. So globally, you're seeing incentive schemes both on the supply side and the demand side. So both the producers of energy and also the consumers of energy, demand side incentives for uptick in the adoption of clean technologies. So specifically, in the U.S., I think a lot of you know the watershed announcement of the Inflation Reduction Act. That's about $370 billion estimated. It probably could be more than that. Direct federal incentives are going to incentivize the supply side of the equation. So from our Standard Chartered's client base, we're seeing a lot of cross-border interest from our global institutional clients to invest in the United States based on that. On the supply side, it is the production of energy. You also see demand side incentives in the U.S., but that's more done at the state level. So in the United States, California, low carbon fuel standards. Also in New York, we have some. In New York, we have incentives for compliance regulations for bio-waste diversion, so maybe things like biomethane. And then internationally, we see a very strong demand-side incentives scheme. So places like Europe are definitely well advanced. I'm sure most of you know, being a global audience here. Also in Asia, we see demand-side incentives. So these are things like renewable fuels or co-firing coal with ammonia. So these are things that are really spurring interest in green hydrogen and things like other renewable type of fuels like sustainable aviation fuels. So, broadly speaking, a wide set of incentives that are kind of bridging the gap of the emerging technology, so we can both get the return as well as align ourselves with carbon intensity.
Thank you, and I guess that's expensive. Matt, what are those cost considerations for companies embarking on some of these projects?
Yeah, there's a lot, right? Any companies are experiencing this right now. So there's a involve, as I said before, like companies are set up to respond to earnings reports and stuff. They're not set up to respond to these new disclosure requirements and reporting requirements that the Fed has introduced, the EU has introduced, in Canada we have the Canadian Securities Administrator introducing, right? So this is going to be very costly in order to ramp up and in order to accommodate some of the things that we're going to have to do in order to support this whole system that we're developing.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about some actual examples, and perhaps each of you could talk through an innovative example of how your organisation really successfully marries up purpose and profit in the realm of ESG and sustainable finance. Kalyan, why don't you?
Sure, and if you indulge me, I have two that I wanted to
Please.
talk about. So the first one is the implementation we've done on KYC registry, so we know your customer. So we've integrated sustainable trade finance guidelines into the registry, and that allows customers to put in their climate data and really give that transparency on what are they doing with their emissions. So now we've created this framework for the community to be able to pick the customers that they actually want to work with based on that data. So that's the first one I wanted to mention. The other one is Cybos, right? This is a great platform where we engage the entire global community on sustainability issues and leading that change in the industry. And our ambition is to make Cybos the largest, most sustainable conference in the world. So while I have you, I wanted to mention a few things that you're going to see this week, in addition to more than 35 different sessions that we have on ESG and DE&I, other things like that. But first of all, just think about the amount of materials needed to create this conference. So from a SWIFT and Cybos perspective, 40% of the materials that we use have to be either rented, recycled, or reused. The venue is going to take a lot of what they can at the end of the conference and donate it to charities like Habitat for Humanity, so we're going to do that as well. The food, 80% is locally sourced and seasonal. Level 600, you're going to hear a lot about levels this week because you're trying to figure out where all of your sessions are. Level 600 is our 100% fully carbon neutral floor. So check it out. It is our sustainability hub. We call it the Lead for Change Village, and you can really see how net zero actually works. And you'll be able to talk to some of our charity partners that we're sponsoring this week, as well as if you want to know more, what can you do on your own ESG journey? There are many associations that you can talk to. Last year we gave you reusable bottles at the stand. This year we're encouraging you to bring your own reusable bottle, and when you use one of the water filling stations, every time you scan the QR code, we will donate to the World Wildlife Fund. If you're here on a all-week pass, you have free transportation. So, and I think I've heard people that have used it from the airport on the up, that they just said they were with Cybos and they just let them onto the train. So that's another great thing. Finally, the sustainability pledge is available on your app. Please go on. I encourage you to use that, and that will actually ask you to formally commit to some of these things. That we're really looking to minimize our impact to the community, make our industry more inclusive, and support all of our local communities.
Thank you very much, Kalyan. Hands up, who's ticked the sustainability pledge on the Cybos app? I have. I did it last night. Okay. Hopefully there'll be some more hands by the end of the session. Matt, do you have an example?
Yeah, at CGI, we've established many different communities. We've created really a focus on, if you're doing something with a client, you've got to think that if there is a sustainable angle to it and what you can do. So we're really putting it into a business as usual sort of process and integrating it into everything that we do. And it starts really at that level in order to get it going and really to get it operationalized. So that's kind of our focus at CGI. I mean, we have tons of other programs that I could talk about. We're taking it very seriously. But I mean, I think that's the way we really operationalize it from an internal perspective.
Thank you very much. And Ted, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So coming more from industry financing perspective, Standard Chartered was a lead bank on the green hydrogen financing earlier this year, which is $6 billion financing in the Middle East for the largest green hydrogen plant. So that was an innovative structure, innovative plant, and innovative technology. We're trying to translate that into the Americas market, so we are looking at things like project financing for green hydrogen, as well as clean tech manufacturing for things like EV battery manufacturing and solar manufacturing that traditionally haven't been financed in the project finance market. So those are things that we are doing actively. And then finally, one area that is emerging with the Inflation Reduction Act that I mentioned before is the tax credit transferability. So you can actually, in the US now, sell your tax credits that you generate on clean technology projects. But this creates kind of a financing need between the timing of when you actually receive those tax credit payments or monetize your tax credits when you need to spend the capex for the project. So those are type of things that we're looking at in terms of bridging those capital needs for clients. So those are kind of the things that we're looking on let's call it innovative basis for the bank.
Thank you very, very, very interesting. I think I've seen some videos about that. Matt, do you have any projects that demonstrate that circular economy in action?
So we actually don't have a lot of circular. We do a lot of waste diversion and reuse projects internally, but we don't really have a big project. It's kind of funny because I was looking through our archives the other day, and that we've worked in circular economy. We do have a few clients who are big in it. One large retailer in Sweden. We probably own some products that everybody probably owns some products of. We shall remain nameless. And we do work with a lot of other companies in the Nordics with regards to circular economy. Some of the bigger things we've done and have been sort of logistics with regards to avoiding rail collisions and in the shipping industry and Project Seagrass we have in the UK using satellite. We've been using satellite technology. We've been in satellite business for many, many years. So we're using satellite technology to really help the growing and revitalization of seagrass. Seagrass is actually a huge carbon sink. So we have a lot of different projects, a lot of different areas. Circular economy is an emerging area for us. But I think it's an emerging area just as trends go with regards to where ESG is at or sustainability is at with regards to what our clients are doing.
Thank you very much. Kalyani, I guess when a lot of people think about SWIFT, they think about standards, and I guess there's an opportunity here to really operationalize the platform to support sustainable finance. What's your view, what's SWIFT's view on this?
So I think what we do really, really well is we bring all the banks together to really talk about what are the problems of the day that we should be discussing and coming up with the solutions that's going to benefit the larger community. And we really call that a purpose-led innovation, a responsible innovation, and which really means that first you have to have a purpose. You have to make sure that you're solving an actual problem, that you're going to add value to the community, and it's guided really by their needs. And we also we rely on the community, right? We need to co-create with them to be successful. So whether that means bringing them in, doing sprints with them, learning from what we can do better, or we create these sandboxes, right, where you come and play, and then we get your feedback. And so, whether you're talking about CBDCs, you're talking about AI, you're talking about tokenized assets, you just add sustainability, ESG, all of these sustainable finance, and it becomes part of that innovation and co-creation framework.
Thank you very much. Ted, how are government mandates on greenhouse emissions shaping up Standard Chartered's clean technology projects? Obviously, I could reel off a number of regulations coming down the line, but perhaps you could give an overview.
Yeah, so just to reiterate some of my previous points on the work in the U.S. market, predominantly is a state level driven demand side incentive scheme. So where by which low carbon fuel standards in states like California are driving some of that demand side activity for actually complying with those regulations. In Europe, we're seeing very similar frameworks where renewable fuels are being required for transport carriers. So those want to incentivize the actual purchase of renewable fuels such as green hydrogen. And then overall, there's just overall mandates across the globe and in places like Asia as well that are requiring X percentage of co-firing to reduce coal emissions, etc. So all those type of what I call the stick part of the equation is where the governments are really clamping down on the greenhouse emissions and carbon intensities from clients is becoming very readily apparent, and it's driving a very baseline demand level for these type of products.
I guess, Matt, on the coal piece, the carbon accounting piece is also incredibly important. How does CGI, what role does CGI play in helping its clients really navigate that field, and how can technology help?
Yeah, it plays a huge role. So we do have, so in my practice, which is consulting practice, we do have carbon accountants. So we work very closely with clients on that. And the other area, really that's an emerging area, it's been actually around for a long time, but is really more new or cutting edge to North America, is the area of green IT. And so really looking at such things as procurement, looking at such things as renewable energy, for CGI, our data centers, we just helped negotiate a REC transaction for CGI. So our data centers are now in Canada all run by renewable energy, right? We're talking about green coding, so code efficiency, right? It actually costs a lot of money to send emails. It costs a lot of money to run the infrastructure, the soft infrastructure that we have, right? That's carbon emitting, right? People don't really think about that on a day-to-day basis, but a lot of savings can be done there. And then on end-user computing, right? So laptops and all that. That actually has a much larger impact than you'd actually think. So it's looking at all those things in green IT and working with our clients to help them sort of optimize and become more efficient and look at those things themselves and consider those things themselves.
Thank you very much. So now I'm going to open up the floor for questions. We've obviously talked about the KYC registry. We've talked about standards. You guys have been giving lots and lots of examples. So opening the floor out to any questions or any of the panelists. No. Oh, George.
So there seems to be a lot, particularly around ESG, when it comes to first world corporates and particularly investors, right? And a lot of this seems to be, and I'm not belittling it, but it seems to be around, kind of some existential angst that, Western corporate and investor sort of buy sides are very concerned about, and it is aligned with CSR, right? That seems to have been its genesis. But how does this? Does this go beyond investments in corporate equity and maybe debt, right? Or is this a global sustainability question? Everything that you've spoken about today is really very much focused on that, rather than a global sustainability view.
Good answer.
Yeah, I'm fine. So I think right now we're in a phase where, and I think like Todd mentioned it in the beginning, it is very regional, it is very bifurcated, it is very jurisdictional as to what each area is doing. And the other problem is that we are in a bit of a situation where everybody's trying to do something on their own, right? Now there's many associations that have been sprung up, GFANS, like the Net Asset, the Net Asset Owners Zero Emissions Alliance or whatever, right? And they're coming together to work on problems. But we also see that these are rather fragile and vulnerable associations right now. And you're seeing a lot of people pull out of both these two mentioned groups. So I think we're in a very figuring it out kind of period right now. So I don't think we are going to get to that global sort of situation yet. And also, the legislation isn't solidified yet. It's still kind of nebulous, right, as to where it will settle and what each jurisdiction will decide to adopt, right? So I'm not sure. I don't really know if we'll ever get to a global view. But I think like what Ted said, there's a lot of really interesting and innovative stuff being done. One thing I wanted to mention was that in 2021, a large Canadian bank did a $500 million green bond, right? And what they did was they invited into the syndicate minority, women, indigenous, veteran, and black-owned businesses to participate in a lead role in a syndicate. I don't even think I've ever seen anything like that in my life before. So what does that speak to? That's really an area where a lot of companies are actually struggling to be innovative in, which is social, right? That's inclusivity, that's accessibility, right? That was a huge deal. I don't know why that deal didn't actually win more awards, to be perfectly honest. I thought it was incredibly innovative. And I think capital markets, as we all work in capital markets, is an incredibly innovative area. So you give them a chance, there's a lot of opportunity, and they will go after that opportunity and create really interesting products.
But it's still very much in that capital markets, investment banking,
Yeah.
not transactional banking, Main Street, trade,
It's trickling down. It's trickling down. Yeah, I think Main Street's going to feel it very soon. The next generation, right? Like my kids, they care a lot about this stuff. Like without any influence on my part, my daughter went into environmental engineering, right? And it had nothing to do with, like she saw me working in capital markets most of the time, right? So I think the next generation really, really cares about it. And I think they see us as, we've been kicking the can down the road. I think it's really coming to a critical mass. We're not quite there yet. And I think also governments have to do a lot more.
And just to answer the question about the retail focus and transactive banking side of the equation for finance, so one area that has seen a lot of growth in the US at least has been residential solar, and that has been financed a lot by securitization and the capital market. So there is a retail nexus, so to speak, with that. There's also things that, such as we're talking about with tax credit transferability, that affect more kind of retail audiences, like community solar, etc. Community solar basically are sub-utility scale solar plants geared towards a specific community that providing clean energy to that community. So I see your point. We focus a lot on the global institutional investors and banks because that's where a lot of the capital is, but it is kind of percolating in certain areas to retail the retail side of the equation as well. But to your point, it's probably limited compared to just the global platforms that are investing.
And there's green credit cards, right? We're seeing green credit cards come out, so there's retail banking right there. Right? So it's trickling down, sure.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm going to ask everyone to round up. I guess if you can give a quick summary for your takeaway for balancing purpose and profit vis-a-vis ESG initiatives. Kalyani, over to you.
Thank you. So, as a cooperative collaboration, we live and die by, right? And I really have this call of action. I see a lot of our member banks here in this room, and I mentioned the ESG survey, but we recently put out a survey to not only our internal companies, but to all of our local communities as well, asking you to help us assess and prioritize, against 15 material topics. And really what we would like to do with those data insights is continue to evolve and put together a multi-year ESG strategy for the community that will be hopefully available at the end of December for this year. So you've got a couple of weeks, the survey is open to the end of the month, and we'd love your feedback and to continue this to the dialogue and how to make a positive impact across the network.
Thanks, Kalyani. Matt.
Yeah, I just want to continue the must kind of narrative. I think it's really important. I think everyone in this room should educate themselves and be educated, right? Because that's how you're going to really integrate ESG into your business. And there is opportunities, and it is a giant de-risking exercise. And I think the more you engage, the better it will be.
Ted.
Yeah, I reiterate Matt's comment on education. I think it really is about, from my perspective, I look at it from a technology perspective, but the technology has continued to improve, so I think there's going to be increasing areas by which purpose and profit are going to align themselves quite well, especially if you overlay kind of the compliance cost with de-risking your carbon intensity, let's say, for your enterprise. And then we didn't even touch upon the scope 1 through 3 emission reporting that a lot of the companies are looking at. So traditionally hard to decarbonize industries such as steel, making, maritime industry, maritime shipping, they are looking seriously at these emerging technologies, and they might not be as profitable at the beginning, but again, kind of taking that investment and going for the long term by which you will help comply with the regulations, as well as this technology improves, it inherently will become more cost effective for your operations over time. I think these are these are clear things that every organization has to look at their own operations, et cetera, and opportunities and clients, but these are things that are really real, all enhanced by the incentive schemes that we kind of touched upon at the very outset.
Thank you very much. And as Kalyani, you pointed out earlier, that there are several sessions throughout the week that will cover this, and half an hour doesn't really do it enough justice. I guess just to summarise, collaborate, educate, engage is the key takeaway. So Ted, Matt, Kalyani, thank you very much for this fantastic panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.